This week it was reported that 7 super funds had been overcharging an estimated $3.6 million in insurance premiums. Keep watching today and I'll show you how to check if you're one of them to see if you've been impacted by these extra premiums. So for a long time, the insurance companies have been pulling a nasty trick, which was charging insurance premiums at smokers' rates for non-smokers. And whether or not you're one of these funds that I'll explain a little bit later, what I'm going to do today is show you how to check to make sure whether or not you're impacted. If you find this all too hard and you do want a little bit of help doing this from me, if you want to shoot me through a quick private message, I'm happy to take it offline and help you go through your statement to check everything that I'm about to mention today. Now, I'll just take you back. My first job as a planner was working for a AMP financial planning practice, and one of my first tasks was to call a lot of the corporate super members we had. And the reason I'm telling you this is that part of that process was as you exited one of our group superannuation funds that we looked after, the Royal Flying Doctors, Tiffany's, those sorts of ones. What happened with your insurance was that unless you let AMP know otherwise, what they did was they charged you at what they called a hybrid smokers rates, which essentially meant that the insurance itself was more expensive than had you have made that nomination that you're not a smoker. Now, I know that you're busy. You've probably come back to this and looked at it at times. You don't always check on the statements that are sent out. So what that led to was, in time, people would be paying these extra premiums, and then we'd have to go back and try and fix this for them because they hadn't received a letter and they had never been a smoker. And essentially you were charged extra money for something that should never have happened. So the first thing I'd encourage you to do is check your statements. So number one is you could either go online, log into your super fund and check your insurance tab to find out the details of the insurance that you have in place. It should list whether you're a smoker or non-smoker, and you should be able to find those details again, as I mentioned, by going through to that online portal. Secondly, you should have recently received your financial year statement from your super fund. So if you grab that piece of paper, look through the details where it comes to insurance, it should again spell out for you the details that are included in your policy. So you should be able to check there whether you're deemed to be a smoker or non-smoker. Or finally, you can pick up the phone and call your superannuation provider, ask them for the detail as to whether or not you're listed as a smoker or a non-smoker. And then I'll walk through next what you can actually do if they've got that information incorrect. So if they do have that detail for you listed incorrectly, so for example, you're a non-smoker and they've got you listed as a smoker, you don't want to go the other way around, obviously, and tell them if they've got you as a non-smoker and you are a smoker, but ask them, how do you go about making a declaration to have that smoking status changed? And the main way that you do that is by completing a non-smoker declaration form. They should have one of these, or you can actually just ask them exactly what needs to be done. Could be a templated letter, could be something along those lines. But essentially what you want to do is have that change take effect as soon as you possibly can. The next thing I'd encourage you to do is explain to them, if it is the case that you've never been a smoker, ask them if it's possible to have the premiums backdated to the start of the policy for the whole time that they've been charging that extra money. Now, this is where it gets a little bit more tricky. It's not something that I've seen a great lot of success with in chasing this backdating of the premiums. But as always, the only answer that you could get, the worst case scenario, is that you get no. If they say yes, bonus. You may need to complete a stat dec or a statutory declaration to make that happen. But again, they're the two things that I'd be doing if you found that the listing on your insurance policy is incorrect. Finally, I just want to run over who the funds are, and there's 7 that I'm sure you've probably heard of. The first is AMP, the second is Colonial First State, Equity Trustees, IOOF, including OnePath, Intrust, Netwealth and Suncorp. Now, these are the 7 funds that have been picked up by this reporting by ASIC, and I'll share the actual link to the document afterwards so you can have a look through it as well. All of them have stopped this practice of charging you more for the insurances, but only 4 of them have agreed to refund the premiums. So Colonial First State, Equity Trustees, Intrust and Netwealth have agreed to refund the affected people. So if you are with one of those funds, you should notice that you're getting a refund for those extra premiums back to your super fund. And at the time of publishing the article, Suncorp was yet to make a decision as to whether or not they would be refunding that money. So if you are a member of those other funds, your premiums have stopped, But again, I'd be really interested to see what happens going forward, to see if some of the other ones come to the party and look at some of these refunds, because it is the right thing to do, obviously. So if you have insurance in place through your super and you haven't checked it in a while, I'd encourage you to make sure that you check your statements, to check that you're not getting slugged premiums for insurances that you shouldn't be. If you follow the steps that I provided in the video, you'll be well and truly on your way to getting started with this and taking the first steps to getting this corrected if there is something that's incorrect on your policies. And as I mentioned earlier, if you do want some help going through your statement, if you're not sure what to look for, send me a private message and we can take it offline. I'll be happy to go through and help it out, or help you out with that one as well.